Hello and good morning, afternoon, and evening. My name is Tina Shah Paikeday, and this is my second time on the Aconic podcast, which features Asian leaders who've had real impact. The first episode I co hosted with Soon Yu, which featured my dear friend Yamini Rangan at HubSpot. And today I have the privilege of talking with another longtime friend, Dipanjan Deb. Dipanjan Deb is CEO of private equity firm Francisco Partners, which he co-founded after his time at TPG. He has served on numerous boards, including currently serving on the boards of Beyond Trust, Boomi, Good TX, New Relic, and Sonic Wall. Dipanjan is a graduate of UC Berkeley's Engineering School, where he serves on the board, and at the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University, where he previously served on the Board of Trustees. He also currently serves on the UCSF Foundation Board. Dipanjan, first of all, welcome.
Thank you very much, Tina. It's an honor to be on this podcast with you and appreciate the invite.
Terrific. Well, you and we met a long time ago. I think it was actually probably around 1995, so maybe 30 years ago. We both worked in the San Francisco office of McKinsey and Company, and since then you've had quite a journey. So would love to share a little bit more about you, the person behind these super impressive credentials that I just shared. Could you tell us a little bit more about Dipanjan?
Sure. Well, first of all, that does seem like a long time ago, and I feel like I'm aging in dog years. Although I guess it's the beauty of dogs. We have two dogs at home, and they never seem to age. They have their youthful exuberance. So I certainly don't have that as I once did in 1995. So very briefly, I grew up in Calcutta, India. Both my parents taught electrical engineering, computer science. I moved to the States when I was 8.5 years old. My parents wanted better opportunities for my sister and me, and for that, I'm forever grateful to them. Probably the three or four interesting things potentially about me is when I was growing up, I went to 9 schools in 9 years, and the time that didn't seem so fun, but in retrospect, it was probably the greatest thing that happened to me. I learned to make new friends in new environments. Today, I married my college sweetheart, a person I met first day of college. We dated uh, last 2 years in college, and we've now been together 37 years. My wife Shashi, who's an adjunct professor at UC Hastings, we're actually about to celebrate our 30-year anniversary. I have 3 daughters, 26, 23, and 20. They're the loves of my life, although they say that Francisco Partners is my fourth child. So those are probably the salient facts about me.
Wow, no, terrific. Thank you for sharing that personal background and congratulations on your 30th anniversary coming up as well.
Thank
Um, I think we'll dive a lot into some of these different areas over the course of the time that we have with you. But first, I wanted to just understand it sounds like you're an athlete and that serves you well in the work that you do. Tell us a little bit more about maybe the sports that you play and some interesting facts around where the love of sports have led you.
well, and saying I'm an athlete is a euphemism. I did play a lot of sports growing up. My dad actually played 3 sports in college. He played soccer and cricket and field hockey. And so I developed my love of sports for him. But when I went to 9 schools in 9 years, the way you ingratiate yourself with new classmates is you play sports at recess. So growing up, I played a lot of soccer and basketball and tennis. Frankly, I played almost every sport I could. Um, and I tried to ingratiate that with my 3 daughters, Genevieve, Serena, and Mira. I coached 22 sports teams. Although my oldest always tells me, Dad, whenever I'd get frustrated with them, they couldn't do better. They said, Dad, we're the daughters of bench warmer, which I mostly was in high school. So where do you think these genes come from? But one fun fact is, well, 2 fun facts. One is probably the proudest moments of UC Berkeley for me is I won the intramural, or my team won the intramural softball championship and the intramural 3-on-3 basketball championship for 6-footers and less. And I also got to play tennis with Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. So those were probably some of my most fun memories from sports.
Oh, wow. What a treat. In fact, yeah, I played basketball in high school, so can appreciate winning that particular championship that you mentioned. And our families have known each other for a very long time through the Indian community. And it's pretty funny to think back to the early 90s and how few Indians there may have been in the professional services community of San Francisco. My husband Tony is a big fan of Nadal and Federer, and we remember having so many fun conversations with you and Shashi. 'Cause they're both trained as lawyers. We talked about what it was like to grow up as children of immigrants, and what's one very surprising fact about you.
Sure. So, Shash and I host a lot of dinner parties where we have table conversations, and this has come up a few times where people talk about embarrassing moments. So, I have so many embarrassing moments in my life, but in no particular order. So, my name is Dipanjan, as you pronounce, but my business school professor the first day called me Parmesan. So, I've gone by DJ ever since. So, that that's actually what it was circa 1994 when I entered business school. During an investor event many years ago, I fell in the pool with my suit on. So that's not something I like to replicate. People thought I was having a heart attack, but I was just clumsy. So, if you ask Mira and Serena and Genevieve, they will give you a list of 100 things dad's done ridiculously, but I don't think we have time for all of that on the podcast.
Those are good ones. Yes, and I know the name fact. In fact, my name is Vaishaki, but I go by Tina for similar reasons. Hard to get some of those more difficult ones right. So, discuss maybe a little bit more about your passion and purpose. I think we introduced some of them in your formal bio, but wanted to just understand a little bit more about your passion around education. Given the time that you've made to serve on educational boards for three major universities here in the Bay Area, including Stanford, Berkeley, and UCSF, I know that this has been important to you all of your life. You shared a very interesting story, and I think you mentioned it a little bit here, the 9 schools in 9 years, but very curious to learn more about how that came about.
Yeah, so as I said, my parents were both educators in India, but being engineering teachers in Calcutta circa 1970s meant you taught, but you didn't really do research. They moved to Silicon Valley because they wanted more opportunities for themselves and they wanted more opportunities for my sister and I. My sister's a lawyer today. And, growing up, it was my mom's ambition that I get into Stanford and my sister get into Stanford. I did not get into Stanford for undergrad, so she was upset about that. Luckily, the business school did let me in, but I knew that education can inflect lives, and it has really inflected my life. Going to Berkeley for electrical engineering really gave me confidence that I could accomplish anything, and then going to Stanford for business school opened so many doors for me. I don't think I would have gotten the job at TPG had I not gotten to Stanford. The people who hired me at TPG both were GSB alums, and then obviously have created a great network of friends from both schools that I'm still friends with today, and they've been instrumental as part of my lives since I went to those alma maters. And by the way, I wouldn't have met my wife had I not gone to Berkeley. So maybe the best thing that happened to me is I didn't get into Stanford for undergrad, and I did not fulfill my mom's ambitions.
Oh, I love that. What a precious story. It just makes me tingle a bit in terms of thinking about the many different ways in which family intersected with education and how you're paying it forward, right? So that folks who may not have had privilege, right, are able to get those opportunities and seek what is in store for them.
By the way, we got involved in UCSF for almost 20 years ago. My wife had a serious heart condition. UCSF basically saved her life, and she's been an incredible and grateful patient at UCSF since then. We've funded a lot of projects at UCSF. The thing I'm most proud of, other than my children, is we've actually gotten 400 people into UCSF at their time of abject need. And you know, someone wisely once told me that everyone's going to get sick at some point, and if you can help people at their time of need when they're sick, there's no more precious gift you can give them. And so that's why UCSF remains near and dear to our heart today.
Oh, wow. Wow. What an amazing story. I'm curious, you said a little bit about the 400 people. I'd love to learn a little bit more.
Well, just, our healthcare system, it's the best healthcare system in some ways in terms of when people have rare diseases, but it's hard to navigate. And when people find out they have some serious illness, they don't know who to go to.
Mhm.
And we obviously are lucky we live in the San Francisco area where there's kind of amazing medical institutions. but just not trying to find a right doctor, et cetera, especially when you're stressed, trying to figure out what to do for your loved one, or if you are the patient. And so I feel honestly, like I said, as with my children, like helping people get into UCSF for healthcare issues is the thing that I'm most proud of in my life.
Oh, wow. Wow. What an amazing contribution. Let's, now that we spent a little bit of time on these more personal passions, turn a little bit to work. And, just earlier this year, I saw that Francisco Partners was recognized as the number one top performer in the 2024 HEC Paris Dow Jones Large Buyout Performance Ranking. And you say that the team's relentless focus on excellence was a big part of this recognition. Ever since I've known you, I think you have delivered with excellence, and maybe perhaps that dated back to the excellent firms where you were trained, whether that was McKinsey, Robertson Stevens, TPG. How did this particular value around excellence develop for you? Does this come from some of your formative experiences?
Yeah, so Tina, first of all, thank you for the kind words. And I would say we are proud of the achievements that Francisco Partners achieves. So Dow Jones does this ranking of all private equity funds over $1 billion, and they do it on six metrics: multiple of money, net IRR, and dollars returned. These are the things our investors care about, and it's based on rolling 10-year averages. And so we were number one in 2024. My mom will be happy about that. The thing I'm most proud of is over the last five surveys, we're in the top three each time, which is 14 years worth of data, and we're more than two standard deviations away from the median, which is obviously tough to achieve. It wasn't always that way. 2005, 2006, our firm almost went out of business. So it's been a big recovery story. At the time, our fund had $2 billion under management. Today we have 50. But you say where this comes from, I'd say like I am very competitive. That was, innate. But growing up in Calcutta, when I was 5 years old, my parents hired a tutor for me because there were three great schools. They were all Catholic schools. We're not Catholic, but St. Lawrence, Don Bosco, and St. Xavier's. Thousands of kids take a test to get into one of those three schools. I was lucky enough to get into St. Lawrence. And then in grade one or class one, you take a bunch of tests. And at the end of the year, they force rank you and they add up all your scores and then they count you backwards from, number 88, number 87, number 86. And I remember I was 6 years old sitting there with my mom and dad and saying, please don't call my name, because the later they call your name, the better you did. So that's the Indian system I grew up in. And I don't think that ever really left me. And so well, I also recognize, by the way, these ratings or rankings are all backwards looking, and what really matters is the future. And that's what I tell our team at FP, which is the past really doesn't matter, and you can't rest on your laurels. All that matters is the future, because that's what the investors care about.
Wow, wow. You must have been sitting on pins and needles since you listened for your name and waited for it to come last. But certainly, whether it's those formative experiences, and sounds like your mom has been a real influence in your life and pursuit for excellence. But, I think like any leader, right, we all have our challenges, and wanted to explore with you, just maybe thinking back to co-founding Francisco Partners, perhaps after you left Robbie and TPG to do that. The early days probably weren't easy. Um, and maybe tell us a little bit about how you went about founding it to becoming established as a strong performer.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, the path there was not linear and rocky. I would say, let me start with the fact that I feel very fortunate. I had great parents. My mom was super ambitious. She drove our move to America. My dad was my hero growing up. He always kind of believed in my sister and I. He was always there to take us after daycare when we went to different schools. He kind of actually sacrificed his career for his children. It was a great role model. So not everyone has that advantage that I did, which is my parents stressed education and they prioritized their kids above all. So, when I would say that, however, when I was leaving TPG to start Francisco Partners, it was 99, the markets were red hot. We raised a lot of money, so we were very fortunate. And then we proceeded to lose 500 million in two of our first three deals, which I would not recommend doing. And, we were seed funded by Sequoia Capital, Mike Moritz, who ran Sequoia for nearly 20 years. served as a mentor for me, and he helped restart the firm. And I remember him telling our investors, like in his uh, dry Welsh accent, which is, I have lots of philanthropic interests. Francisco Partners is not among them. I believe in big markets and I believe in young, hungry immigrants. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I hope you too. You do too. And people did. And so I feel very fortunate that he took a chance on me. Sequoia took a chance on me, and we got a second leash on life. And since then, I sort of help manage our firm thinking that we're 1 hour away from going out of business. And if you have that mentality, then you kind of strive for excellence. But it was not easy. When we were fundraising for Fund 2 and Fund 3, I got turned down over 900 times. And that's, you can't take that personally. And I would say, like, really, like, I got that from my dad, which is he just always believed in himself. Sometimes even when the data is but you have to have that entrepreneurial spirit when things go badly.
Super interesting. 900 times, right? And it is probably both that entrepreneurial spirit that comes from immigrant backgrounds, which it sounds like Mike
Or
Moritz made part of the pitch, if you will.
or stupidity. Yeah, or stupidity.
One or the other, right? Tell us a little bit about how did that relationship come about for you? How did you become a mentor, knowing that mentors have been such a critical part of the lives of so many leaders? How did that come about?
Yeah. So when we were starting Francisco Partners, we left TPG. We had a non-compete period with TPG. And at the time, I started Francisco with another person from TPG named Dave Stanton, who was my boss at TPG. And when we left, during that 6-month non-compete period, we were allowed to put together strategic relationships. We partnered with Sandy Robertson, who was my boss at Robertson Stevens. He joined our firm, and Sandy knew Don Valentine, who had started Sequoia. So Dave and I went to go pitch Don. We'd done a lot of semiconductor investments, and Don was a semiconductor investor by background. He said, meet my partners, Mike Moritz and Doug Leone. So we met them, and they luckily took a chance on us. So we got to know Sequoia in the early days, in the late 90s, and then that relationship continued, for multi decades.
Yeah, that's terrific. What a great story. And I think you mentioned you had a co-founder, and you weren't always the CEO of the firm. During my time leading the DEI practice at Russell Reynolds, I had the chance to work on a few leadership transition projects myself. And this transition to CEO is never an easy one, especially for those of us who come from underrepresented backgrounds. You, I think, started the firm at age 30 and became CEO at age 35. Quite incredible. What did you learn about yourself during this period of transition to becoming the CEO of this firm?
Well, I would say I was a battlefield promote just because our first fund didn't do well. So, look, and by the way, 35 seems young, maybe for finance, but in the tech world, that's old. Like, you're over the hill. So just a matter of perspective. I've learned so many things from so many people. Like, and I try to learn something from everybody I meet. And, I've learned things from my 3 daughters. I've learned things from my wife, Shashi. I've learned things from my sister and brother-in-laws. I try to find what they are all good at. And then I had great mentors at work. Sandy Robertson, who co-founded Robertson Stevens with me, he treated everyone the same. And he lived life by a kind of simple proverb, which is, when you die, people won't remember what you did. People will remember how they made you feel. That's the old Maya Angelou quote. And I've tried to emulate that from Sandy. My boss at Robertson Stevens was a guy named Mike McCaffrey, who was our CEO. And Mike projected such confidence that the organization kind of fed off that. And as a leader, so I tried to learn that from Mike. Paul Stevens, who was a co-founder of Robertson Stevens, first day of work, he said, the art of selling starts when someone tells you no. And I took that to heart. I'm like, okay, yeah, just because when someone rejects you doesn't mean it's ever thus. So I've learned so much from so many people, from all our portfolio company CEOs, from all of my partners. So I wouldn't say I've had one mentor. I've had many, many mentors, but the people I, pointed out, my parents, my family, Mike Moritz, Sandy, Mike, et cetera, were probably more influential than others. But I've really learned a ton from everybody over the years.
It sounds like this value of learning kind of rings through to everything you do, whether it's contributing back to education or learning from other CEOs, taking the values that your parents brought up with you. This aspect of learning seems to ring through and through.
I would say one thing is on these nonprofit boards, I joined them because I believed in the cause, whether it was UCSF or Stanford or Berkeley. I learned so much from the other board members at all those great institutions. Just when they would say something, there would be an epiphany. I'm like, wow, how did they think about that? Why did they say that? And so it's been an incredible background being surrounded by really talented folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make time for investing in nonprofit boards, and yet you do it. You've done it with three major universities, and certainly makes sense of why you've gone ahead and done that. Um, I think we may conclude a little bit about just your vision for rising talent in our community, given the focus of this podcast. As take a moment just to think about the Asian community and perhaps including right your three daughters. We're a community that tends to work hard but not necessarily get recognized for leadership potential. Yet you've been able to really rise to the occasion and lead such an impressive firm, and work with so many wonderful and excellent people. What is your vision for the advancement of young Asian professionals like your daughters, for example?
Yeah, what I tell my daughters and I tell other people who ask me, first of all, like you know, when I entered finance in 1991, and I was an engineer by background, my parents wanted me to go to an engineering company, but I luckily went into investment banking at the time. At the time, anyone of color was perceived to be worker bees versus management. What I say to everyone is don't let others define your end state. You define your end state. And, like your career is like a soccer match, which is you're going to get 3 or 4 crosses. And the great strikers like Messi or Ronaldo convert those crosses, and other people don't take the chance. So don't live life doing what if. Like take a chance. The worst thing that can happen is you'll fail and it'll be okay. Now, I realize I'm saying this, whereas, I didn't grow up in abject poverty like many of the kids do today. So that I think the situation is different. But no matter where you come from, you've got to take chances, and you have to believe that if you're a good person, that's all that matters. And even if you have failure, you'll learn from that failure. I've had way more failures than successes, but I've tried to learn from that and not take it personally. Like as long as I'm a good person, I treat others well. That's the best I can do. And then you got to try hard. I've been teaching a class at the Stanford Business School with a real professor called Ilya Strubelev, and I say he's Batman, and I'm more like Alfred. But I do tell all the students that don't just try to create pedigrees. All these Stanford Business School students try to create pedigrees all the time, and I mean you've got to take chances, and life is not linear; it's non-linear. And don't believe what other people's definition of what you're supposed to be. You define what you need to be, and that's particularly true in the Asian community where um, sometimes there's a perception when you're growing up, conform to the norm. The great entrepreneurs, the people you read about, don't conform to the norm. They define their own vision.
Wow, there's so much in there. I'd love to learn a little bit more about this class that you mentioned. What's the name of the class, and what have you
Yeah,
studied lately?
it's basically the class is called the finance of private equity, but it's effectively how do you start and run a private equity firm. It turns out that they've been teaching this class. Ilya's been teaching this class with a venture capitalist for almost 15 years. And about 4 years ago, they realized that more students actually go into private equity than venture at the GSB. And so they said, let's start doing this for private equity. So I our co-teach this in the fall. And we have amazing amount of guests. That's been the real fun part of the job. And teaching with Ely has been fun. And, these kids all have, they're not jaded by world yet. They all want to change the world, which is all fun to see.
That's great, and it sounds like you have a chance to help shape the next generation of leaders, whether in private equity in our Asian community. And I love what you said about try hard and you're going to fail, whether it's 900 times or otherwise, but get back up and believe in yourself and take those values through with you. So many nuggets in there, Dipanjan, and we really appreciate the time that we've had with you today. Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you'd like to share with us?
No, I would just say, what I tell people is be authentic to yourself. The piece of advice I'm giving is just take it with a grain of salt. Don't try to be who you're not. Everyone has to be authentic to themselves. And like I said, like I've learned so much from lots of different people, but I've never tried to be those people.
Yeah,
My three greatest piece of advice for folks is be authentic. Don't have FOMO or fear of missing out. If you have FOMO, it never ends. And third is the Maya Angelou quote, which is try to treat everyone else the way you're treated. My daughter's actually taught me something. The goal, I always live life by the golden rule, which is treat everyone the way you like to be treated. They've changed that to the platinum rule, which is treat everyone the way they want to be treated, which I've not really heard of, but I think it's totally true because how they want to be treated is differently than how I might want to be treated. So I'd say those are my kind of three aphorisms, as it were.
I love that. And that's music to my ears as a expert in diversity, equity, inclusion, the platinum rule. And I'm glad that your daughters are carrying that forward. One last question for you, and I didn't share this with you in advance, but if you were to recommend someone else to be on this podcast with us, who might be a person that you'd recommend that we reach out to next?
So I have so many friends who have accomplished so much. But one of my close friends is a guy named Harold Chen, who ran the TMT practice at KKR, and then we became the president and CFO of AppLovin, and which is over $100 billion market cap company. He's now looking for his next gig, but he's taken lots of chance and done amazingly well. So that he comes to mind, but there's lots of other people who have also accomplished a great deal as well.
Another risk taker and someone who's benefited on the other side, it sounds like. So that's a great idea. And, thank you for making time with us today. We know that you have a busy schedule. So thank you again.
Thank you, Tina. I really appreciate the time and appreciate the invitation.